So, so everybody, is this on? Yes? Yes. Great. Have a seat. There are still places. Just come forward. There are seats in the room. You don't have to be shy. Great. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this seminar in Europahuset. My name is Annika Weppling, and I'm head of the European Commission's representation here in Sweden. And yeah, what actually drives us to take a certain job or go into a certain career? What, and even more importantly, maybe what makes us go really enthusiastically into that career, to really burn for something and say, yeah, this is what makes me go up on Monday morning at 6 o'clock and feel enthusiastic going to work. Is it salary? Is it status? Is it security? Well, I suppose all of it plays a role, but actually research shows that, especially for highly educated people who kind of have an academic drive as well, there seems to be evidence that what's really important is to feel that you are part of something bigger, that you make a difference, even if you have a small part in your job, etc. But you're part of something that drives change, and that you can contribute to making a difference. And I think for most here in the room who are a bit overly policy and politically interested, maybe a bit EU nerds, as I have to admit myself, I can tell you also from own experience that working for the EU and working with the EU policy, tick all these boxes. You feel that you are part of something bigger, you feel that you're part of change. And I think, especially now, in this rather uncertain, maybe even scary global context that we are in, um, this is an extra drive why it's so rewarding to work in this kind of global context. And I don't mean that you have to actually work for the EU institutions, even though that's my job to say that you should. But even working in a bigger context, working with EU policy, working with global or international policy, that makes you feel part of this bigger picture. I think it's very, as I said, rewarding and a positive thing. Today we have two prominent guests who will go more into this, go more into the context, but also to have experience. Both of them have great experience of working in the global setting and will share with you. But I will let our moderator, Göran von Sydow, take over and also introduce our speakers. So a warm welcome to all of them. I'm looking forward to this seminar. Göran.
Thank you so much, Annika, and a very good warm welcome also on my behalf, and good morning to all of you. I'm very much looking forward to the next 55 minutes of discussing the EU, where we are today, why it's important, what matters to the EU as it currently faces a number of challenges, but also on this other side of the path of why it could be interesting to work with European affairs or international affairs, and perhaps what the potential is for searching such an avenue for your future career. I'm very pleased to see a relatively young crowd, which means that you have all the future ahead of you, and also perhaps many questions that you would like to ask our speakers here later on. So please start already now preparing for that. Myself, I'm the director of SIEPS, the Swedish Institute for European Policy Studies, and we conduct and promote research on themes on European integration, but we also do training for civil servants in order to equip them even better when it comes to the essential knowledge about how the EU works. Because knowledge is indeed important to understand the way the world works, but also understand our institutions, the policy making inside the European Union. And that's also a path to exerting more influence over these very policies. Now, for Sweden, having been members of the EU for 30 years, it is a bit troubling to see that the share of Swedes that are actually working for the EU institution have been steadily declining. And looking at the forecast, it looks even worse so. Because many of those who came to work for the EU and the EU institutions at the time of our membership period 30 years ago, they are now, I think they are merited, they are now going into retirement. And there needs to be a replacement. So there is a need for young people to also search for such avenues ahead in the future. So at today's seminar, we will talk both about where the EU stands, but also this other side. And I'm very pleased to welcome two very prominent speakers that will share with us their experience, background, knowledge, and insight in these fields. Federica Mogherini is the rector of College of Europe, a very well-established educational institution that has been over many decades produced tons of knowledge, but also people that have gone through the training and eventually have been working with European matters in institutions or elsewhere. Before taking up this position, Federica Mogherini has a long background in politics. She has served as Minister for Foreign Affairs of Italy, and also for 5 years the High Representative for the EU's foreign and security policy and Vice President of the Commission. So as you hear, a lot of experience. We also have Ann Linde with us, who many of you know. She served as Minister for Foreign Affairs until 2022, and prior to that, Minister for EU Affairs, State Secretary, International Secretary for her party, the Social Democrats, among many things, and now currently working on in a dozen of contexts on international global affairs in various international organizations and think tanks. So I'm very happy to have you here. And the seminar will proceed as follows. Federica Mogherini will give some introductory remarks, followed by comments from Ann Linde, and then we are very eager to hear your thoughts and questions and comments. So now please join me here, both Federica and Ann, and you take the place you want. Wonderful. To. Very warmly welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You hear me well. Good. Well, first of all, thank you all for coming this wonderful morning, blue sky. It's not the stereotype you associate with a Swedish morning in late October or mid-October. Thank you to the presentation office. Thanks to you for the nice, wonderful introduction. I'll share my own experience. I think this is a good starting point, and then, of course, under your leadership, I'm happy and ready to go in any direction you want, being it more on careers or more on the state of Europe and the world today. We know each other for a really, really long time, and I think we can discuss literally probably anything. Indeed, I think we first met in a political party background, so it was really indeed many years ago. So I'll start with my own story because I think it's a bit particular, it's a bit peculiar compared to any other people that have worked with the European institutions or in the European institutions, meaning that I have never been, and actually probably I'm still not, a EU nerd. I never thought of working in the European institutions. I had very clear in mind, since I was 16, 17, what my passion was. It was a completely different era, but my passion was the world. So I was interested in how the world was changing. It was the beginning of the 90s. I was interested in contributing to shaping what at the time seemed to be a bright future. Globalization, multilateralism, the fall of the Berlin Wall. So my passion, my drive was contributing to make the world a better place. The European Union was not really in the picture for me. I wanted to be a journalist and a reporter in the world. I wanted to work with the United Nations. I wanted to become a diplomat. I wanted to work with NGOs, go to Africa, build hospitals, a lot of different things. Every year I had a different idea, more or less. But what interested me was clear, was contributing to making the world a better place. I actually started with civil society, civil engagement, volunteering, and then moved to a youth organization, youth political organization, and then to a party. And then from there, I took the political way. I was in parliament, and then I became a minister. And only at that time, I crossed really the European Union. Actually, when I was in parliament, I was much more involved in NATO and or in the Council of Europe. I met actually Europe more and first through the Council of Europe. But then, when there was the opportunity for me to go to Brussels and be a commissioner or vice president even, it was very clear to me, well, this is a great opportunity because doing foreign policy at European level rather than a national level is going to be much, much more impactful. And I perfectly remember, and I was very clear with everybody around me, I would never go to Brussels to be a commissioner for anything else but foreign and security policy, because this is my field. And I perfectly remember one of my advisors already at the time, Natalie Tocci, whom you might have heard if you are in international studies or EU studies. I remember she came to my room, I was minister, and she told me, why should you do this? I mean, you're the foreign minister of a G8 country. At the time, still G8, G7 was a bit unclear. Why? I mean, you are in a powerful position. And actually, she advised me not to do that. But then she said, actually, it was a good choice. And I can tell you, even without having a basis of EU nerd, or again, I didn't do EU studies, I loved it. And up to now, it's the best experience I've ever had in my life, professionally and personally. So much that when I finished my mandate, I decided to stay in Brussels, which for someone from Rome is a big, big, big thing. And I'm still here, I'm still there, starting my second mandate as director of the College of Europe, my 11th year in Belgium. At a certain point, I will go back to the blue sky of Rome. But work-wise, I cannot think of any better experience of being either within the institutions or, like I am now at the College of Europe, in an environment that is somehow replicating or preparing for the European environment. Because a couple of words about the College of Europe, indeed we do masters, postgraduate masters, hyper specialized on European affairs, so it's conceived to be somehow the pipeline to then entering the EU bubble, being it the EU institutions or indeed the many consultancies, NGOs, think tanks, law firms that operate around the European institutions. There is an entire world. But just 2 words for why I liked it so much. And again, I loved also all my previous steps. First, the working environment, the social environment, is, if you like, international interactions, if you like multiculturalism, if you like to be challenged in your habits, if you like, not only traveling, but also being in contact with people that are from different backgrounds. Brussels is a concentrate of multiculturalism in a European city. That is quite easy to live. And you don't find anything like that anywhere in the world. You walk in the street and you hear different languages. You work with colleagues from all parts of Europe with their own cultures, with their own working cultures, and that makes you grow immensely. So it's an hyper-stimulating environment in a positive sense. And I know in Sweden, a lot of attention is given to the balance between work life and the rest of life, not only family life, but private life. I think that over the years in the European institutions and around, this culture has grown also enormously. And I think that now it's a good balance. So this is number one, the social environment, the working environment, the international growth that you can have. Second, for which it's important to study languages, brackets. And the second thing is the quality of the work. Working in Italy, I loved it. Civil servants were great. Decision making was, well, it was what it was, but it was okay. But it was all about politics. And again, I've grown up in a political party. That was my environment, but it was all about politics. When I moved to Brussels, I found out that policy is much more interesting. It's much more fun. It's much more free because you focus more on the content and less on, it might seem strange to hear, but it's true, and less on the process and on the environment. When you discuss a policy, when you discuss a directive, when you discuss an action to be taken in the foreign policy or in the security and defense policy environment, the first and main concern is the content of what you're doing, the content of what you're proposing. In a national environment, the politics of the party dynamics, of the public debate is much more prevailing. And this luxury of focusing on the content of what you're doing, at least for me, was a game changer. And I loved it so much that I decided then to continue in an academic environment, which is not my environment at all, but the college is a special academic environment. It's very political in policy terms, because I wanted to continue working on the policy rather than the politics. Of course, you also have the politics a bit, but it's a different kind of dynamic. You don't have the pressure of the everyday vote in parliament, the media attention, all that. You have this luxury of doing quality work on the policy proposals in a way that is absolutely amazing for me. Maybe I've spoken even too long, so I'll stop here, and maybe I'll say a bit more about the college later.
Excellent. Thank you. Wonderful, Federica, for this personal background, but also the relevance of the themes that we are talking about here today. Now, Ann Linde, I would like to turn to you and share your perspectives and comments and reflections from what you've heard from Federica.
Well, is it on now?
No.
Is it on?
It must be dark green.
Dark green.
Dark green. Hello?
Yes.
Oh. Well, I also think it's so great that there are so many young people here with with the possibility to have an European or international career. And I have more or less copy and paste career as Federica has, starting in the school student union and then slowly evolving to non-party political civil servant at the Ministry of First Youth with Margaret Wallström as my first minister. And we were really, really pushing for a better world, I would say. I was 27, she was 34, and we have so much fun, and we really thought we could change the world. And in some parts we have done, in some parts we have done. And then going more to party politics. I think that what was said here in the beginning, that to find something that is bigger than yourself, is being part of something that really is changing the life of many people and the situation, be it in environment or peace and security or anything, that is so fulfilling. And I think EU is such an organization that really can change and is changing the circumstances both for societies and for individuals. And that's why it's so fulfilling to work in such an environment. I worked as first civil servant when we were preparing for a referendum of the EU, if we should join EU or not, both first non-political and then political, and gladly we decided to join. And then worked both as a political advisor to the Minister of European Affairs and then being a Minister of European Affairs myself. And I think what the seminar today is about is very, very important. And that is we need more Swedes in the institutions. When I worked together to prepare the Swedish membership, I and one of the then responsible ministers, Jan O. Karlsson was his name, he's unfortunately not with us anymore. We had negotiation with the Commission how many Swedes could actually get place in the institutions. And then we got kind of a quota, so if we have enough people who actually could do the steps. We didn't just get to place any Swedes there. They have to be, of course, merits. We could have a special quota, and we filled it with Swedes who worked in the institution. And then we saw how important it is, because if you're a pen holder, for example, for a proposal, say it's about the policy of woods, for example. It's different if you are a pen holder coming from Sweden with, big parts of our whole country is woods. Or if you are from Netherlands, where they know the name of every single tree. Of course, you will propose different policies for the decisions that the EU will take. And as you all know, the decisions EU take is so extremely important. And I think most Swedish people don't understand how extremely important the decisions in EU are. And I was just a few weeks ago, I was in the foreign ministry because I'm in the board of something called Swedes in the world, svenskar i världen, for those of you who know. And there was a woman coming up to me. We were having a mingle with the foreign minister, Maria Malmö Stenegård, and she comes up to me and say, I just want to give you a book. And she gave me this book. It's called Brussels from the Inside, Remembrances from EU Civil Servants. I said, oh, this is very interesting. And then I found out that I wrote the foreword, but I had totally forgot it. So I felt a little embarrassed when I came home. I said, yeah.
I should have known.
I should have known. But the interesting thing in this book is that it's two things, and that's why I brought it with me. One is that all those, it's like 20 or 30 stories from Swedes working in all different areas in the EU institutions. And many of them are now pensioners. And from the first time when we were sitting there getting those big batch, we were around, there was around 1,000 Swedes and still is in EU. They are going to be pensioners now. It has already started. So there is like 30% less now and in just a few years. So we need to get more Swedes into the institutions. And their stories also could help us to see what is the most difficult hurdles for you to take those steps and for other Swedes. And in all these steps, and I worked only for 1.5 years in Brussels at our part of European Social Democrats, which was very rewarding. But then they wanted me to be state secretary, so I moved home. And it says that the beginning is very difficult because there is such a hierarchical working environment that we are not used to in Sweden. We are used to that you can easily, if you're working in an authority, an agency, or even a ministry, normally if you are, a civil servant, you can meet the highest head of the agency, the ministry, or so on. You follow with your closest head of the department or so on. But everything they are saying is that we never met the commissioners. Now maybe it was different in your case. And also it has, there is a bureaucracy that we are not used to in Sweden. And all of them are also saying, like, when I became political advisor to the Minister of European Affairs, Mats Hellström, in 94, he said, okay, now you will be thrown into the cold water. Either you swim or you drown. Okay, I swam. But the stories that these Swedes who has been in the institution say, it's exactly like that. Many of them didn't even get an introduction when they started to work in the commission or so on. They were just, or they didn't even get a room. Or someone said, I had to see where I could sit because I was just there and I had to organize everything myself. Hopefully it's different in different Director General Directorate, but I think that this is also something that is you have to prepare yourself for when you're looking to work in the Commission. It shouldn't scare you off, but I think that you need to have a mental preparedness that it is different to work in Brussels. Even if it's very rewarding, it's kind of a cultural shock, and that was also for me when I actually started to work in Brussels. I also thought I spoke French, and then I I started to work. I don't speak French, and I was really, really trying, but no, it was not possible. But I think that's a good thing to work on also, if it's possible. So I think I stay there
Thank
for
you.
now.
Thank you so much, Ann, for that. And it's also something that we've noted that the knowledge of second foreign language in Sweden has been declining over the years. So it's something that I would at least strongly encourage you to continue with picking one of the other main European languages is a real advantage. But Federica, yes, please.
Yes,
please.
I have a. I mean, again, we know each other for long, and so it's quite natural that then now we enter into a conversation. But I promise I'll keep it short. But I think what you said is really true. It is a cultural shock, and not only if you are a Swede and you enter the institutions, but also if you are an Italian, there are other things that might be shocking because the hierarchy is not your own nationality only, and so you might have a boss that is a Dane or an Irish or a Portuguese, and it changes enormously the way in which things work. For a Southern European, it might be shocking to have a hierarchy that is Scandinavian, because the working culture is, again, similar to yours and definitely not similar to mine. In the south of Europe, we are used to show our dedication to working endless hours. So you have a prize if you are the last one getting out of the office, which is absolutely not the mentality in Brussels. Actually, if you do that, it means you're not organized and you're working, not efficiently, which I think is what you think rightly so here too, right? So if you manage to organize your work and you finish early, it's that you're good. In Italy, no, you have to show attachment and dedication, and you have to be the last one switching off the light. I hope in Italy things are changing too. But this to say that, yes, it's a cultural shock, but for everybody. So everybody feels on the same boat, and there is a sense of solidarity and of learning from each other that is quite unique. And the more Swedes we have in the institutions, the more the working culture changes. So it's actually can be a very beneficial effect because, again, we learn from each other's way of working. And the other little thing I wanted to say is that, yes, to start being mentally and culturally prepared to that, but this is a little bit advertising spot. Being at the College of Europe for 1 year prepares you exactly to transition to that kind of working environment perfectly well, because you live and study with 50 different nationalities, and you are out of your comfort zone already, but in a safe space, because you're not working, you're studying. So yes, of course you have marks, but you're not, in a hierarchical situation at work. So that year is not only about knowledge and transfer of knowledge or growth in terms of understanding and knowing, it's also about getting ready to interact in a working environment that is multicultural and European.
There is, of course, different traditions inside here, and at least what I hear is that Scandinavian or Nordic people in the Commission, they were quite popular as becoming managers because they care a little bit about these things, perhaps differently from others. But at the same time, there is one person who actually leaves the office latest of all, and that's the current Commission president.
She lives there.
She lives in the office, and
that's a bit extreme.
That's not setting the right example, perhaps. Now, I would like to invite for questions and comments, and in the meantime, when you think, and I will start looking at you, I have one question which relates to where you were ending, Federica. So we are now facing a situation where many expectations are put on Europe, and particularly European Union. We're facing a global context with geopolitical tensions. We are expecting the EU to move forward when it comes to security, defense, when it comes to foreign policy, industrial policy, etc. And in view of that, what do you think are the specific skills and how to prepare yourself for making a contribution in this sense? What would you say are the key aspects here? And I'm sure that you have that in your training at the College of Europe. Of
Absolutely, yes. And this is one of the things I discuss the most with our students. Career advices, but also how to get ready for that, and how do I manage to make an impact? Because I would like to come back to the first initial thoughts, the sense of purpose. I'm not just in a job, I'm not just earning a salary, I'm making a contribution to something that has an impact, and together with people that share my same sense of purpose, it's part of that. But then the question is, how do I make an impact? in that environment? Which are the skills? In my experience, and what we try to pass to our students, I think quite successfully, are first of all what you said at the beginning: knowledge. Knowledge is power in the world of today. If you know your file, if you know the mechanisms, the way in which things work are decided, then you have also the power to change them once you are inside. First, you have to know the rules of the game, to know the content of the policies. In my experience, being on top of your files, knowing more than, hopefully, or trying to know more, or at least as much as any other in the room on that specific topic, that is, in the European environment, putting you in a different category. So knowledge, study. Not only when you are at university or at the college, study also when you're at work. Study your files, read everything that comes on your desk, because this gives you really the power in an environment where policy counts more than politics. That is really the key for success. Know your file. Second, flexibility, open-mindedness, be ready to be challenged, and to understand where others are coming from. Because the particularity of the European context, much more than in an international environment, because there is a difference between working in the European Union environment and working in the UN, for instance, environment. And that is that nobody expects the UN to come, well, yes, but I have to be very careful talking about the UN in Sweden. But nobody really expects the UN to have a single decision, policy, to be united, to speak with one voice, because of the nature of the UN. It's the world. So we know that, China and the United States will not have the same voice. But in the European Union, you have to forge the common position. And this is unique. It doesn't happen anywhere else. So you have to be ready to understand where the other 26 are coming from. What is the cultural, historical, geographical basis for a certain position to be affirmed, the woods? You have to understand that in the Netherlands, yes, they have very few trees, and that is also a way of living. If you work in the Commission, then there's not only the Commission. You can work in the Council, you can work in the European Parliament, you can work in the External Action Service, you can work in the Committee of the Regions, in the Social Economic Committee, in any of the constellation, or the stars in the constellation of the European Union. There are many more than these ones. But still, you have to understand where your interlocutor, your colleague, the other side, which is inside the same body, comes from. So open-mindedness, readiness to listen and to understand, and to put yourself in the other's shoes. And this flexibility comes also with a certain sense of resilience and patience. Things can take time. You can get frustrated. But in my experience, things get done. It takes longer because democracy in complex environments takes long. But then when you achieve something, it's much more solid and reliable than anywhere else. If I can share an anecdote, when I was a high representative, I met once with a foreign minister of an African country, and he was really angry at me, really frustrated, and he was telling me, your aid is coming, but it's coming too late, and it's too difficult, and it's cumbersome, and the reports and the filing of things, and it's, and it comes always late, and it's so difficult. We so much more prefer when aid comes in like that, without strings attached. I was tempted to walk out of the room, I have to admit, but anyway, a couple of years later, after, are we Chatham House? Anyway, it's not a mystery. I'm fine. A few years later, when Trump was elected for the first time, the same minister called me and said, Federica, I have to apologize. Now I get it. In the European Union, it's complex, it takes long, but once it's there, it's reliable. Because it took you time to build it, and it also takes you time to destroy it if somebody wants to destroy it. See how long it took for the UK to get out and how difficult it was. So once you manage to do things, they're there to stay, and they're stable, and they are reliable. And he was telling me, I would now say I'd rather prefer to have something from the European Union that is difficult, it's complicated, it takes time, but then I know it's there to stay, rather than something that with switch, with blink of an eye can be done, but also undone without any process. And processes are actually something good. Complexity is actually something good because it allows all different views to come together, and then it builds something that is really solid. So I would say these skills are important. Patience and knowing that frustration can be part of the process, but then it delivers. Openness to the other, resilience, sometimes also physical resilience. There are some meetings that are endless. It's not the norm, but it can happen. It's part of life. And also some practical skills. Languages are helpful. English is the usual working language, but if you can speak the language of some others, French is a plus, but also, any other language skills is useful because when you work in an international environment, it creates a connection that is human, not only working. But English otherwise is normally the working language.
Well, thank you so much. And I can just add that it's fair, ample evidence from research also that knowledge and skills, they actually have a real impact. And we study that from all the way up to the very top leaders. That knowing the files, it means even when prime ministers meet, they will have an advantage if you're on top of things.
Absolutely.
So it's about knowing the substantive part, but also the overall systematic aspects. And this is key, I think.
I can tell you again, as I started with the Chatham House or not.
We're not Chatham House.
No, but it's fine. But this is no mystery. I mean, the reason I was also sitting, the High Representative also sits in the European Council, so where the heads of state and government sit. And I was there at the time of Merkel, and the reason why Merkel was so impactful in the European Council was that anything that was discussed, digital, economy, foreign policy, anything, she had studied the files and she knew exactly what she was talking about. Not all prime ministers or presidents were at the same level of dedication to studying the files, and for sure many other leaders do the same. But that was striking because there was nothing she didn't seem to be an expert on, and for sure she was not an expert. She had studied her briefings.
Less sleep, perhaps. She was an expert in.
Yeah.
Do you want to add something on this discussion about how to prepare and bring?
Yeah, I would say flexibility, but also the possibility to compromise. For example, if you're a minister, there is always from the media, it's seen like it's a game. You win or you lose. And I often experience, for example, the demands, kick that ambassador out, or why did you agree to this? And it's actually a skill to know how to compromise and to know where are the red lines. And you should not have too many red lines, but you might have some. And you say, I can compromise on many things, even that is controversial back home, but then I would be called for to explain why we have taken those decisions, why Sweden has to agree to this and this and this. As one example that everybody in Sweden know and everybody else thinks is strange is the snuff, snuset. The lobby on me when I was Minister of European Affairs to try to change the issue of the snus, so that it should be able to be sold all over Europe. And they asked us to try to get the directive to be changed. And they didn't understand that if you open up already take a decision, like Federica said, if you have a decision, it's solid. If you open up that decision, then everything is in the air. So what we would risk and open up the directive on alcohol and cigarettes and those, it would be that there would be a total ban on snuff, for example. And that is very difficult to explain to people back home, but you will always have to defend why you're taking a decision, where is the red line, and so on. And the negotiation always starts at the lowest level. So it starts, even if you are, a civil servant in a directive or so. First, you have to see what things could we agree upon, and then you take it to the next level, and the same. Then you take it to the next level, and it's just the final level, the level of in the council meetings or so on, that is those issues that has not been able to be solved on lower levels. So that means that you have to prepare on how to do a negotiation, how to be successful in a negotiation, but also when to back a little bit, because you will never get 100%. And that is a skill that is not easy, but you really need to, because EU is a kind of negotiation machine. You always try to get your things. For example, just one other example, is the question, you know, I was in a feminist foreign policy, a feminist government with a feminist foreign policy. Very happy I'm invited to Paris next week to be at the French government's big conference on feminist foreign policy. And we had to negotiate on what should be in the gender action plan for the EU. And some of the things, some women's group wanted to have the rights of abortion and was really, really pushing for that. But then you don't think of that if you have 27 countries, maybe there is a majority for an abortion ban. I just, you know, maybe there is not, but still. So if you put things in that is very important to you, you need to see, is there a risk of losing it? Because you think, we push this, and then you are so sure that everybody else will agree, and they don't. And then you sit there, and maybe you have thrown away something that was not perfect, but it wasn't bad. And you need to be like a chess player also to see, you know, how will this country react, how will that country react, and so on and so forth. We thought, for example, it would be easy to you know, make, not throw out, but make it more difficult for Hungary and Poland when I was Minister of European Affairs, because they were not following Article 2 in the treaty, which is the article of democracy and human rights and so on. So we started what is called the nuclear option of EU, the Article 7. And everybody thought, we thought, really, that now we could change Hungary, for example. And we have this, everybody will follow it, and they will feel, oh, we have to change in Hungary because everybody else is against us. And then we were surprised it didn't happen, because we hadn't really thought through, you know, the next step and next step and next step. And it's still going on. It was only the Commission who could do a thing, because they could use money, and they got Poland to change when it comes to the judicial. That's another story. But I will also underline how important it is to know how to negotiate, how to compromise, how to, like Federica said, to put yourself in the other person's position. What are their red lines? What are their wishes? What will they be able to compromise on? I think that's very important in an organization like the European Union.
I think it's Margot Wallström who constantly comes back to this view on European history, that we used to solve our conflicts in battlefields in Europe, but by now they are solved in boring and long meetings in dull conference rooms in Brussels. And it may not sound exciting, but it's far more efficient, and it also reduces the number of negative aspects.
Definitely so.
That said,
and if I may, but that will open. But you know, at the end of my 5 years, I was often joking with my team about this, that if a meeting is boring, it means we have good decisions already established. So the aim was to have the meeting as boring as possible, because that meant there was consensus. So it's, I guess this is a sort of consensual Scandinavian approach. Yeah, if a meeting is boring, probably it's fine, it's good. But also, to underline one thing that Ann was saying, the fact that many decisions are taken at the lowest level, and then you bring it up to the next level of the hierarchy only if there are troublesome things, it gives anybody a lot of power, because even if you just entered, even if you just as a desk officer, there's a lot of decisions that actually you can contribute to taking without going to the next level immediately, because this is unique to the European Union. It's the civil servants, it's the officials that forge the common positions. While in a national decision-making process, it's mainly the parliament or the government So it's more top-down. In the European Union, it's really bottom-up. So wherever you sit in the institutions, in whichever institution, you have a lot of power, even if you just entered. Again, on your little tiny thing, maybe you don't see the biggest picture, but on what you're working, you really have a lot of input.
And it does not only concern making decisions and laws for 10 million, such as in Sweden, but actually 450 million across the whole.
And sometimes the world.
And sometimes the world. Now, please show your hands and raise your questions, concerns, objections, or anything else. Should we start here in the second row, right there?
Hi, my name is Alice Lam. I have two simple questions. The first is about age. Yesterday you told us age is not, it doesn't matter. Another question is which kind of basic knowledge we need if I apply this kind of education. Here's what I show. This is a high level. This is a master program. So I was a doctor, pathologist. Now I'm a language teacher. But I have studied a little bit EU political system and a little bit political scientist, only little. So I don't know which kind of basic knowledge we need to apply this kind of education. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Do you want to answer?
Yes, this is, sometimes simple questions are not easy, but this is also easy. First of all, yes, there is no age limit to apply to the College of Europe. We have the average age of our students is when they come straight from university. So it's a postgraduate master, so it's a master after the master. So normally our average age of students is 25, 24, 25. But we have students that are taking a gap year from work, for instance, and are in their 30s or their 40s. The important thing is that you're ready to enter that kind of environment, which means a residential program where people around you are in their 20s. But it doesn't mean that you have to party every night. It's perfectly fine not to. Actually, this is an advice we also give to our 25-year-old students to avoid that. But there is no age limit. Every year we have some students that are in their 40s or around their 40s, because many of officials, even officials that are already working in the European institutions or the national institutions, take a gap year and come to study. On the background, our director for student affairs and admissions is in the back, so he can give advices, Pierre. He also speaks English, not only French, so that's good. So he can give you more detailed information, but in general terms, of course, you have to have an academic qualification. So you have to have a bachelor and a master in general terms. It depends on the university system of different countries, but in general, it's after a master. And you have to have a certain knowledge of European affairs, but we do make exceptions, and we do have students that we admit that come from different fields of work or studies. We have engineers, we have medical doctors. Yesterday I mentioned we even had a civil pilot once, because what is most interesting for us is the passion on European affairs, so the curiosity, the willingness to learn, and something else that is highly valued is the civil engagement. If you show in the course of your CV that you have been volunteering or part of a civil society organization, or that you have changed your course of action or your professional experiences in different fields, somehow that you have this attitude towards intercultural European environments, that is often enough. And the languages, we have a basic requirement of French. So if you think of applying, we also offer intensive courses of French, so that's the positive side, but you have to be at least ready to learn French if you don't speak French already.
Thank you so much. I think we had one more by the window over there, and please raise your hands and I can, yes, I see you there. So next.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Muharib. I was wondering that you both come from a political background. How would you say that it has helped you in regards to the knowledge and skill aspect? Thank you.
Thank you. Should we take one more, as I saw one hand in the fifth row? If you show your hand again so Maya can see you. Yes, thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Clara. I'm currently an intern at the Swedish Institute of International Affairs. There's a couple other interns here too. and we all have very specific regional focuses. Personally, I focus on China. I was wondering what avenues or opportunities there are for people that have very like regional focuses outside of the European Union, if you have any advice for us.
Great. Shall we try these two questions and then we have time for another round if you give relatively short answers?
That's my
so
challenge.
political background and also regional expertise, interest in the wider world. Ann, do you want to start?
Yes, thank you. Well, I think there is different experience that help you in different way. And of course, if you are in a political if you have a political background, you are used to deal with different viewpoints, and you are used also to, know your know your file in a way and defend what you are doing, because that is what you do if you're a member of a political party. You always argue for your sake. You have different views in different parties, so that is of course an advantage. But I don't say that there is that's more advantage than anything else. But I also say that EU in the end, the councils with the different politicians are taking decisions, and as Federica said, there are thousands and thousands of decisions taken on lower level. But in the end, it's the ministers who decides a lot of the issues. And sometimes, if you're not used to be in the political environment, it could be difficult to understand. Why did I take this decision, or why did I go that path? So it could be easier to understand. And you also see if there is ministers, for example, who has no political experience. Often they are short-lived, because it's a very specific environment, the political environment. So I said it's not at all a necessity, but there are some things that could be easier to understand, and so on and so forth. And then, of course, also, if you're a civil servant, you have to work for different kinds of policy. I worked for a minister from the Christian Democrats, for example, who was minister, and that went fine. In the files we could work, and you have to suppress, if you're a civil servant, you have to suppress your political agenda. You cannot, pursue your political agenda when you are in a non-political position. But the understanding, as I said, is could be something of value.
Yeah, I perfectly agree. It's not a must. And it might even be easier if you want to be an official not to have a political party background, because indeed it gives you more neutrality. On the other side, personally, I have learned a lot in my political party life, especially in the youth organization. And I think that youth work, youth organizations in general, might give you the same kind of skills. The negotiations on common, documents in congresses, but I think that it's not exclusive to political parties. Again, if you are in a National Youth Council, or if you are in an NGO, you might have similar dynamics too. The negotiating, again, text amendments to Congress resolutions, or indeed understanding the political dynamic. Why is that so? That a country or a member of the European Parliament or a political group absolutely wants this done. Having been in a political party dynamic helps you understand what is behind the reasoning of others. But you can acquire the same negotiating skills on, for instance, drafting texts, which is a very important very important skill, even in other organizations. Anything that somehow forces you to find compromises and consensus is helpful in that respect. And yes, the party politics, depending on which party family you are in, can also help in terms of connections and networks. We have not talked about networks, but this is, for instance, for the College of Europe experience, something that is extremely valuable in Brussels, in the European Union environment. The power of networking and having connections with people, which is not something bad, it's something actually very positive. It's without, necessarily an agenda, but just knowing people that you can talk to for work and a little bit the overlap sometimes of social and work life that you have to take under control.
Sometimes known in Brussels as the Bruges Mafia.
As an Italian, I cannot. But you know, I was thinking of that exactly this morning. There is a big difference. I mean, the social purpose of mafia is definitely not a positive one. While the social purpose, the mission of the Bruges connections is definitely a positive one.
I was joking.
I know, but still, I had been thinking about that because we Italians are particularly sensitive to this. But the power of networking is impressive. And again, Bruges gives you, the College of Europe gives you an impressive network of alumni. The political families also. Again, we met in Brussels, but we had met before through our party life. And that is something that, again, depending on how large your political family is.
And I have to have an anecdote, because if you know, now in Sweden, Jens Stoltenberg has come with his memoir that are immensely interesting, because he tells so many things. I mean, you're not used to hear or read so open-heartedly. And he writes in his book that we met already in the School Student Union. He's in the Norwegian School Student Union, and I in the Swedish School Student Union, and then met on several different places. And then we had to sit and negotiate for NATO membership together. And of course it plays a role if you know each other for so long and you have good connection. And it's strange how many in the European circles that know each other, either from Bruges or from political parties. I mean, oh, we met there, or we met there, we met there. So I always say when I talk to young people in the youth organization, student organization, build a network. Build a network, because you are interested in the same things as those who are sitting here, for example. And that is the most valuable thing. And I can tell you also, we had some, when there were some difficult things, we could use our friendship to understand each other and get some results. I won't say what it was, but it was good.
It's true,
it was good.
How about the regional?
Exactly, the regional.
I mean, the world in itself is getting much more important also for the European Union.
Yes, and that's a very good question, and that allows me to tell you something that I realized much later in my life, and that's why I actually loved moving from a national environment on foreign policy, because I was working on foreign policy, so on the rest of the world, on Afghanistan, on the Middle East, in Italy. Actually, doing the same at European level, it's an amplifier. So if you're a specialist on China or on Latin America and the Caribbean or on, I don't know, Mozambique or on the Arctic, on the Arctic maybe here you have a little bit more of but doing this at a European level, any region of the world, any global theme of the world you are specializing in, it's going to be relevant in Brussels, because there is literally, but this is true also for all other policy fields, there's literally nothing you are studying or you have been studying. None of you in this room, none of anybody in the entire Stockholm. There's literally no single issue, no single theme, no single geographical area or global issue or local issue on which the European Union is not active, relevant, and impactful. Study China, you make much more impact working on EU-China relations, also for Sweden, rather than Swedish-China relations, because it's bigger. And the same applies if you work on, I don't know, research on pharmaceuticals rather than environmental measures or railways. I always share this anecdote. At the College of Europe, we have the longest standing training for officials, I think started 50 years ago, is on railways. Technical standards for railways. Something I would have never thought of. And yet, every year, for 50 years, high officials or other kind of officials from the railway systems all across Europe come to Bruges to share best practices and opinions and study regulations. There is literally nothing that is not in the radar screen of the European Union, which is not scary, it's good. I'm saying it in a good term, because you can have an impact. Whatever field of studies you have a much higher impact if you apply that through a European lens.
Well, as a train nerd, I'm very happy to hear about this. Although I must say that there is some room for improvement
I think so,
when it
yes.
comes to the European and train mobility. Now, I think these final words from Federica, they were also quite a good pitch for why this is of utmost importance that we engaged, be it if you have your path thinking about moving to working for the European Union. But from my perspective and as a conclusion, I would also like to encourage you to consider that, well, not only that is of importance, but actually European politics at large is something that matters deeply to all our systems, and it requires an understanding regardless of whether you want to go in that direction or not. Even if you're staying here, not understanding how the European issues work, it means that we know less also of our own systems even as of today. But we have now come to the very end of this session, and there was a call for continuing networking made by Ann, and I think hopefully there is some coffee left. But from my side, I would just like to this point thank the Commission for organizing the event, and of course to Ann Linde and Federica Mogherini for sharing, and for you all for participating here today. Have a great day.
Thank you for the moderation.